Welcome to the Eddie Donan Show, episode number 2. Thank you everyone who watched the first episode. Thank you everyone who gave us our feedback in social media. I'm super happy and excited to bring another show here to you guys. And with me today, I have a good friend of mine and team member, Matthew Finklestein. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
Very good. Thanks for doing this. I know it's not really your comfort level, but...
No, I'm excited.
That's good. You're excited.
Let's get into it.
So Matthew's been working with me. He's a team member. He's been with me for the past 5 years. I think going to 6 now.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
All right. Been with you for 5 years. Been in real estate for over 6 years, and working with you. You know, it's been great so far. It's amazing. You know.
Just so you know, I didn't coach him to say this. It's natural.
Natural.
It's not scripted.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do? What is it that you do in our team?
So I guess the two main things. One is working with investors and basically working with our clients to help them build wealth through real estate. And then the other half is working with families. So first-time buyers, individuals, families looking to upsize, downsize. So really just those are the two main areas that working with. Awesome.
Great. And yeah, it's been great having you along for the last 5 years, and we're going along for a bigger ride now. Matthew, besides real estate, what do you do? Tell us a little bit about yourself so you can get better acquainted here with people in the show.
Oh, fantastic. That's an easy question. So been married over 20 years. I have 2 kids, both teenagers, 17-year-old boy, 14-year-old girl. And most of my non-real estate time is with family. But the past few years, it's just going to different activities, after school programs. One of them swims, one of them dances. Personally, I enjoy watching a lot of TV, Netflix, movies, TV shows, binge watching. And then other than that, love hockey. Hockey's the go-to. And tonight,
you don't call Matthew during a hockey game unless you're putting in an offer, or there's like unless a deal to be done. That's the only time.
Tonight is so as we're filming this, tonight is the first Leaf game of the season. But I got showings tonight, so got to do the showings.
yeah, that's the only thing that gets in the way.
That's it.
No, that's awesome. And I like that you're honest. You didn't come in here and said like, "Oh, I like to work out at 5 a.m. and stuff like that."
Oh, yeah.
He's honest, transparent. But what I want to do today is I want to answer some questions. I've been putting out a lot of content, as you guys have seen, a lot of videos. And the last podcast that we did, there was a lot of questions that came out. So Matthew's going to be helping me. He's going to be asking. We have written down some of the questions that came up through our channels. So I'm going to be doing my best to answer them and just kind of give more of a perspective of what the market is like and what we're going to be, what your common concerns are.
The first question we always get asked, how's the market doing? What's going on with the market? Is it a good time to buy?
Yeah, so you know what the market is doing, I guess depends on who you ask, right? If we're talking to a home seller back in February when they were thinking of selling their houses, they're obviously not doing too happy because we've seen pricing drop significantly from the peak back in February, right? If you're talking to a first-time home buyer, they can be happy because the pricing is lower. That being said, affordability is an issue because interest rates are higher, right? Investors, same thing. They can be happy because the pricing has come down. But that being said, it might be a little bit harder for them to get financing on their properties because of the interest rates. So I guess it depends on really who you ask. I find that in the market, there's always compelling opportunities. So you just have to be out there looking and seeing what it is that you want to achieve. I think there's opportunities in the market right now for investors because pricing is down. So even though the interest rate is a little bit higher right now, it's not going to be like this forever. Interest rates follow inflation. Okay, so when the inflation comes down, interest rates will inevitably come down. Perhaps we won't see them back at 1.5%. That might never happen again, but it's going to come down. So an investor can take advantage of buying at a lower price today, taking advantage of the fact that it's going to go back up. So they're buying with built-in appreciation and then refinancing at a lower rate. A first-time home buyer can also take advantage of the same thing, buying at today's price, which inevitably is going to be lower than the price of the house in 5 or 10 years, taking advantage of that, and then refinancing at a lower rate. So I think there's opportunities for everyone, and even home sellers who are looking to upsize or invest in another property. It's a good time because, yes, you are selling lower than you would have sold back in February. That being said, you're also buying lower. So I think the only people that shouldn't be looking to sell right now are those who are looking to liquidate, who are looking to just exit the market completely. If I was in that situation, I would actually hold on.
So that was my next question. It's just about investors who have purchased, they're not looking to upsize or downsize. Is now a good time to sell, or should they be holding on and waiting this out?
Listen, I think real estate is a buy and hold game, and I always say this.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, you should be holding for as long as you can, 5, 10, 15 years, because I'm not wrong. The statistics back me up. Real estate has doubled in price every 10 years in the Greater Toronto Area for the last few decades. Okay, so if you're asking me if you should hold on, I think the answer is yes, you should. That being said, it's also a matter of perspective. A lot of people, they have to retire, they're relocating, they have a property they can no longer maintain, they might be a little bit higher up in age. So if the time, if you need to sell, then go ahead and sell. It's not bad out there. Pricing still year over year, we're still slightly higher than we were in 2021, and we're significantly higher than 2020 and significantly higher than 2019.
Right.
So it's not like you're gonna be losing money, but yes, you're not gonna be getting those gains that you would have gotten if you would have sold at the peak of the market.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm saying hold on is because I do feel that even though the market's lower now, might be a little bit lower even in the next few months, it eventually is gonna do what it's been doing historically, which is rise up, and then it's gonna be a better time for you to sell.
Perfect. So one of the groups of people we talk with are investors, and we talk with a lot of first-time investors. So I'm coming to you, first-time investor. What's the advice you want to give to people?
Yeah, I've said this before, and that's a really good question. First of all, it's clarity, okay? Because we all like to get in love with the idea of investing. We want to become an investor, but what does that really mean? Like, what are you going to invest in? Like, you want to buy a pre-construction condo? Do you want to buy a flip?
Landlord?
Do you want to lend mortgages out? So first of all, you want to know what it is that you want to do.
Right.
Clarity. And clarity starts with your end goal, right? Because people tell me all the time, I want to have 5 or 6 properties. Okay, for what? What is that you're doing? What's the end game on this, right? So I think you really need to sit down and see what it is that you want to achieve with this investment. For most people, is that they want to have a property that will have appreciation. So they want to buy today, and then in 10 years, they're going to have doubled in price like it has in the last few decades. And they also want to have some cash flow because they usually don't go hand in hand. Right. A lot of properties, prime locations, they're going up, the appreciation is there, but they're expensive to begin with. So the rental won't cover that full amount. There's no cash flow. So a lot of people want both.
Right.
So you really have to figure out exactly what your goal is. Are you going to pick up something that's going to give you cash flow or carry itself, but perhaps it's not going to grow at a rapid rate? Or are you going to pick something with speculation purposes that you're perhaps going to put money out of pocket every single month, but you know the return is going to be there because it's downtown of the city, right? Or it's huge developments going around. So it all depends really what your objective is. I guess to synthesize the question to give you an answer, just set your objective first. What's your goal? And then work backwards.
Perfect. Right. In the previous episode, we focused on pre-construction. So we spoke, and you talked about the different options there that we have. One of the other option is being a landlord, renting it out.
Yeah.
So can you talk a bit about being a landlord, renting it out?
You know, that's what I do. That's what I love. Because I believe real estate, for me, when I buy, personally, I'm not looking at a property for a year or 2 years or 5 years. I'm looking at a 10-year plan. And that's what I tell you when we're advising clients, we're not looking for, is this something we're going to get rid of tomorrow or in the next month, right? So I'm looking for the long term. And for me to have long-term properties, I need to be a landlord, right? So I think that the majority of investors that really, really enjoy the wealth of real estate, those people that you hear they have $3-4 million worth of equity in their portfolios, is because they've been successful landlords. So being a landlord is very much like a business. Okay, when you have an investment property, when you have a rental property, it's very much like a business. You need to treat it like that. In a business, you're going to have problems. In your real estate business, you have problems. You have certain times that your listings might not sell at the price that you want. They might take longer. You might have invested money or time into that client and it doesn't work out for you. So that's a loss. Same with a rental property. There are times you can now minimize your risk, but there are times where you're going to have problems with a tenant. They might not pay you on time. You might have to evict the tenant. You might have maintenance, repairs, issues that you have to deal with that it's going to cost out of pocket money. Sorry about that. But that being said, in the long run, if you do things properly, if you scout your tenants properly, if you're a good landlord, if you maintain your property, if you're proficient with it, and you overall do your due diligence, the returns are astronomical because the tenant is actually paying your mortgage. They're paying the interest portion of your mortgage. They're allowing what's called capital recapture because they're paying towards your principal. So essentially, they're paying that property for you, and then the market is doing what the market's doing. It's doubling every 10 years. So it's a win-win scenario.
That's the ideal scenario. Absolutely. So you touched on the mortgage there.
Yep.
So is getting a mortgage for a second property, is that different than getting your first one?
Yes, it is. And I would say that's why, again, you have to really strategize as to the type of property investments that you want to get. All right? There's many different ways to get a mortgage for a second property, because the second property is very ambiguous. So for example, you might be living in your principal residence right now, and you might be thinking, well, you know what, I need something a little bit bigger because it feels tight for me, right? But you might also be thinking like, hey, you know what, I want to be a real estate investor. I want to have a rental property to pass on to my kids.
Get that all the time.
Exactly. So in this case, you might decide, well, you know what, I'm going to refinance my current house, take money out of the property. I'm going to leave my current house as a rental property, right? So the rent is going to cover, hopefully, the new refinance and the amount that I take. And that amount of money, I'm going to take it to buy the second property.
Perfect.
Okay, so you can do that. That's one way to do it. That might be easy to qualify in the sense because you're using now your whole income to qualify for the new property. Another more conventional approach, once you have a property that you're going to be satisfied living in for the few years, is just to refinance, take money out, and use that money to qualify to buy a rental property. And now, how hard or how easy it's going to be to qualify, again, I'm not a mortgage broker, but I do have a lot of experience in this. It really depends a lot on your current income level, but it also depends a lot on that rental property itself, how much money that's going to generate. So that's what we were saying before in the show. I was saying that cash flow and location, sometimes they don't go hand in hand. Because in the city of Toronto, you might be making a great investment. You might be buying a condo, or you might be buying a house for $1 million if you can find one. And your mortgage payment will be, let's say, with the interest rates today, about $5,000. Okay, but your rental might only pay about $4,000 of that. So in that case, when you're applying for a mortgage, the bank will see that, and they'll say, well, you know what, it's not really carrying itself. We're going to go see how much you can afford as a deficit on a monthly basis. So that's why it's important to be very strategic as to what you're picking.
So what happens if I want to do this, but I've gone to my bank and I don't qualify? Now what do we do?
That's very common. It's one of the very common questions, because a lot of banks, they don't know how to, not saying that the banks don't know, but a lot of the reps, or sometimes the reps working in the bank, they don't work with investors. Okay, working with investors, working with somebody who has more than one or two properties, it becomes a challenge how to structure that mortgage application. You have to understand that if you go to the bank A, that bank is only going to offer you products for bank A. They're not going to tell you about bank B or bank C. Okay, so now you're going to be disappointed because you invest all your time filling out an application, waiting for them to get back to you, and their answer is no because they don't have a program that might be suitable for you. Now you go to bank B, and that might be the best scenario. My advice for anybody who's serious about investing in real estate is to speak to an independent mortgage broker. And the reason why is that person, first of all, will have access to all top 5 banks. They're going to have access to lenders. They're going to have access to even private money. So they're going to be more able to secure you proper financing. Okay? And secondly, not only just go to any mortgage broker, go to a mortgage broker that has experience in working with investors, in playing with your equity. That's how you build a portfolio. And the same goes when you're going for an accountant, or you're going to a realtor. A realtor like ourselves, I believe we bring a lot of value because I'm an investor myself. I have multiple properties, and I've helped multiple clients get in 10, 12 properties. So I know how to help them pick the properties, choose the right location for them to get appreciation, cash flow, that perfect balance. And I know how to connect them with the right people to get finances. So it's not just about going to any mortgage broker or any realtor. Go to somebody that has the experience, that has done this before, because it gets tricky for you to keep on buying more properties.
I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned location. Where's location right now?
Again, that goes with your objectives. Obviously, right? You have to go with history. Toronto, the city of Toronto, has done fantastic in the last 100 years. We're getting a massive number of immigration, a lot of growth, a lot of new companies open up spaces here. And we just don't have enough land. We don't have enough housing. We're never going to build to meet the demand. So as an investor, somebody thinking long term, it's really a no-brainer. You know, if you were given right now $1 million, go buy in Toronto. You're going to be fine. It's going to work out for you. It's not a guessing game, right? But again, what we were talking about before, Matthew, is that not everyone can afford to buy in the city.
That's it. We're talking about building wealth.
Correct.
So someone who's starting out is not going to have that million.
Correct.
So let's say somebody's got 500, half that budget.
Yeah. There's many places in Ontario. And I think that the problem with a lot of people, even watching this podcast, a lot of my clients, and a lot of realtors that we only focus in the GTA.
Right.
So we're only thinking like, you know what, Matthew, we're going to go buy in Toronto. Okay, you can't afford Toronto, let's go to Barrie. Okay, let's go to Oshawa. They're only thinking within the greater Toronto area.
Yeah.
But I think investors that are really limited in budget, they should look further. There's nothing wrong with you buying a property in Windsor, Sudbury, North Bay, Sault Ste. Marie. At the time of this recording, you can get properties in Sault Ste. Marie for $300,000 that will rent out for $2,000 a month. Okay? So the numbers there work out. You can cash flow. Now, the growth is not as aggressive as if you were to buy a downtown condo in Toronto. You're not going to get those type of returns, but it's a place for you to get started. They're still going up.
And that's the whole concept about building wealth.
Correct.
Start now. You can get cash flow. As opposed to in Toronto, you may not be able to have that cash flow, but you can start building your wealth.
Right.
And in a couple of years, you've got some equity and you can build from there.
Absolutely. I've had a multitude amount of clients that have come to me and they're just not ready to buy in Toronto. And after I sit down with them, and you know what we do somewhat of an action plan and we figure out when they're going to be able to enter the market to invest, if at all.
Right.
And I've had a lot of clients that just looking at their numbers, looking at their income, looking at their current property, they're just never going to be able to get an investment property in the GTA. Because based on their income, they only qualify for $350,000. They only have about $50,000 down payment.
Right.
You know, so where are they going to go? So I refer them to other partners that we have across Ontario that are going to help them secure property so they can invest.
And that's where you start.
And then, the cool thing about that is that those properties have gone up in value more than we even anticipated. They've doubled in value, in the last 10 years. And now these people can take that money, sell, and re-enter the Toronto market with a hefty down payment.
There it is.
Okay, so it's a matter of getting into the market. I tell this, and I've heard you advise your young clients as well. It's a lot of clients want to buy, first-time buyers specifically I'm talking about now. They want to buy in the GTA. They want to buy in Toronto, but they can't afford to do so.
No.
So
it's
it's
a stepping stone.
Get somewhere, build equity, then sell it and re-enter wherever you want to live.
Perfect. So we talked a lot about the positives.
Yep.
So when you're buying a rental property, what are some of the things that you should look out for?
Well, the big one really is, you have to make sure that you're not going to get screwed over by your tenant. That's the big question here, right? That's a big risk. That's the biggest risk, right? Because right now you're bringing a tenant into your property, and tenants are protected in Ontario. They have a lot of protection. And I'm not here to argue whether that's right or wrong. I do believe that there's two sides to the story, and I do believe tenants need protection against greedy landlords and against greedy corporations. So rent controls, these things are in place to protect the tenant, but also to protect society in itself. So I'm not going to argue whether that's right or wrong. But bottom line is you let a tenant into your house, it's very, very difficult for you to get rid of them, for you to evict them, okay? And the main reason why I'm saying that now, it's because right now there's a backlog. As of today, when we're recording this video, there's a backlog in the landlord-tenant board.
Right.
So if you're not paying me rent, and I'm a smart investor, I know I hire a paralegal, we serve you the proper notices, it can be 8 months, it can be a year, it can be even longer for me to get a day in court with you to evict you.
Day in court.
Okay? During that time, you're not paying me, but I can't go to the bank and say, hey, you know what, Matthew's not paying me. Take it easy. I mean, no, the bank's collecting, right? So that can cause a lot of financial hardship on me as an investor, on my family. That is the biggest risk. And that's when people complain, like, you know what, it's my investment went sour. And again, it goes back to what I was talking about before. It's like you have to treat it as a business, right? You need to have a contingency plan for that, right? And it also depends on your level of risk tolerance. Usually people that have one property, they're going to be okay if that happens. It's going to be tight, but they're going to be okay. But if you have now 3-4 properties in your portfolio, and pardon my language, shit hits the fan, and all 3 of them are not paying you, well, that's going to be very difficult, right? So you have to be super strategic with how you invest, and you also have to know yourself, your risk tolerance, and your risk level, how exposed you are.
All right, so now we've talked a lot about investors looking to, buy a property to rent out. What about first-time home buyers? What can you tell us now about the first-time home buyer plan?
Well, right now there's a lot of opportunities for first-time home buyers, again, in the market itself, because we have seen pricing come down. So as I said earlier, a first-time home buyer can take advantage of this opportunity, buy at a lower price, wait for the rates to drop, and they can refinance, and they get the best of both worlds. There's also incentives in place by the government that make it a little bit more affordable for buyers to get into the market. The main one is the first-time home buyer plan,
Right.
in which a buyer can potentially take money out from their RSPs, penalty-free, and buy your first home. So that's one of them. Second of all is the land transfer tax rebate. So if you're buying in Ontario, you're getting a rebate. And if you're buying in Toronto, you're getting 2 rebates, so a double rebate.
Right.
And thirdly is the first-time home buyer incentive. Okay, so what that is essentially is that the government is giving you part of your down payment. Now, it's not free money. The government's never going to give you the
government's
for
not
free.
giving money for free.
So they essentially become your partner, an equity partner in your purchase. But however, if you have 5% down, which is the minimum, they can top you up another 5%. And if it's a new build that you're buying, they can top you up another 10%. Now, you have to qualify. So if you're in Toronto or the GTA, your income cannot exceed $150,000. Okay, and your mortgage cannot exceed 4.5 times your annual income. So there are restrictions in place, but we have helped successfully several clients use that. However, it's important to keep in mind that it's not free money, right? You will have to pay the government back, and the government will become an equity partner in your property. So as your property goes up, you're going to owe them more money. So it's like a partnership, not really a gift. But those are things that are in place in order for you to make your first-time buying experience more affordable.
To help you get over that threshold.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that you can get into the market.
Correct.
So speaking of getting into, how did you get into real estate? What happened there? How did you end up in real estate?
Well, so I started in real estate when I was 20 years old. So I've been doing I've been doing this for 15 years. Okay. Originally, I've always had my, kind of the flings with real estate, if we can say that, growing up, right? My parents were immigrants. We came to this country, and we had realtors helping us buy. So I always saw that job, and I figured it was kind of cool. These guys drink coffee all day. They eat well. They go to restaurants. They dress nicely. And it seems that money's okay. So I always had that idea, like in high school, like, hey, that would be kind of cool. But as you remember, real estate's not one of those career choices they give you in high school either. So it's not like they're educating on it. So like I didn't know much about it. Then when I was about 17, 18 years old, I had a part-time job and I was working at a men's store, Moore's Clothing for Men. And I was a salesman in there. So that gave me pretty much my first, second hands-on experience in sales. And a lot of the people that I helped dress, they were realtors. And a lot of them would say like, hey, you have good interpersonal skills, you communicate well, you would do well in this career. So it was kind of I was getting exposed to it, let's say it, in that way. And then when I turned 18 years old, I believe it was, or 19 years old, I saw one of those ads in the newspaper that said, build real estate wealth. And essentially it was a seminar. They bring you to a free seminar, and they're trying to sell you a course on how to invest in real estate. But they actually give you enough free information to kind of pique your interest. I didn't buy the course, but I said to my mother, I said to her, you know what, I want to get my license in order for me to start buying property. Exactly, and be that. So when I first started in real estate, even though I thought I was good at sales, my intention was not to sell. I wanted to make an income, a basic income, in order for me to buy properties back then. And it didn't work out that way because actually I started focusing more on selling and then put buying in the back burner. But that's really how it was. Remember back then you can get properties. I started my career out in Oshawa. You could buy properties. I was selling duplexes for $200,000, cash flowing. So it was like free properties. I don't know why I didn't buy back then, but that was the original plan. That's how I got into real estate. And then one thing led into another. And now 15 years later, here I am. So as I was asked how I got into real estate, how did you get into real estate?
I figured this was coming.
How did you end up here?
So, like we said before, it's been over 6 years. So what was I doing previous to that?
Yeah.
So I come from a hospitality and tourism background. I worked in hotels for a long, long time, front of the house, back of the house. And it got to the point where I was thinking, what else would I like to do? And a really good friend of mine, you know who you are, he'd always been suggesting to me, why don't you, think about getting into real estate, take the course. So I just decided, I'm going to take one course, see if I was interested. Took the one course, I was interested, I got hooked. Took the second one, and I just kept taking the courses. And I just started, going through the education process. And it got to the point where, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my license. While I was doing that, so I got my license, but the hotel I was working at, and life, the universe has an interesting way of working things out. The hotel I was at, they got bought by somebody else. So I was getting my license. They got bought. They took over. I had my license. They started bringing in new staff. I was let go, but it was okay because I had my real estate license. And it was just a natural transition. Started working, in real estate. A year later, we met, joined your team, and now it's been over 5 years. I'm in real estate. So it was just this kind of natural progression, changing from one career to another. And it's been great. I love working in hotels, and it was a great part of my life. And now I'm enjoying this. It's a different part of my life now.
It's a new cycle.
It's a new cycle. Yeah, absolutely. So in 20 years, I'll look for my next job.
It's always, I like sharing these stories. That's one of the, my favorite questions to be asked, because I find that a lot of people watching, they're going to get into the industry. We have 70,000 realtors.
70,000.
So that's not going to stop. We're going to get more realtors. And it's important because you know what? Generally in social media, you see whatever we want to portray, right? So you're seeing the agents like highs, but you never see their lows. You never see the struggle. You never see the amount of work that it requires. But it's also a super rewarding career, right? I hate it when agents just come in here and talk about all the negative things about being an agent.
Right.
It's bullshit, because why are you an agent yourself? You've been doing this for so long. So there's a lot of good things, and I think it's a good opportunity. It's a good career path for anybody considering it. And I think that anybody who's looking into seriously becoming an agent, they should be really educating themselves, watching videos, asking questions.
One of my favorite moments with our job is you're representing buyers, first-time buyers. We speak with the other agent, like you come to an agreement, all right, verbally it's done, we've agreed upon it. I know that this couple has just bought a house. They just got their house. So I get the honor of calling them.
Yeah.
Hey guys, guess what? We did it. You bought your first house. I've had people scream, they're so happy, crying on the phone. It's like the biggest moment of their life. They just bought a house, and we get to be a part of that.
Be a part of it. Yeah.
It's that euphoric, that excitement. There's nothing else that I've experienced in a job that matches that. It's amazing. It's so rewarding.
Dude, and what do we say are some of the challenges? What's the ugly part of being an agent?
Well, the flip side of that is finding that house.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to go through 5 showings, 10 showings, 20, 30, and you got to keep finding and looking and searching. It's hard to find that right house. This is a huge investment. Yeah. It's our number one investment in our lives. You want to find the right place. So sometimes that can be frustrating, not just for us, for them as well. It's a hard process. We just experienced bidding wars. Nobody enjoys that. How much am I going to have? I love this house. Matthew, make sure we get this house. How much are we going to have to pay? So that's also really hard because, how much? So it's hard to, and then you lose out. It's hard to go through that process. So I
find that you have a lot of hats.
You have to.
You're giving them counseling, you're giving them financial advice, not licensed, but obviously you're from the professionals, but you're doing a little bit of everything. You're juggling a little bit of everything, right? You're handling emotions, handling negotiations.
We're buying a house. It's a huge financial thing, but it's also your home. It's personal.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance the business side, the financial side, with your heart? You really have to. That's where we come in and we have to say, look, we know you love it, but we got to stick to a budget here. So we have to balance those two. So that can be hard as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But I'm glad you shared that story with us a little bit.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you want to add? Any other questions that you might have?
One is to circle back with the tenants.
Okay.
So it was an issue that you brought up, saying that you got to make sure you have the right tenants, and it can be really difficult. So how do we ensure that? How do we ensure that we get the right tenants into our investment property?
I'd be bullshitting you and everyone here if I told you we had a magic pill for that, right? There's an element of risk in any business. Now, here's the thing. You have to do your due diligence.
Right.
Okay, so you have to make sure you get a full rental application from the tenant.
Right.
Okay, you have to do your homework. Just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it is.
Yeah.
So Google, LinkedIn, social media, pick up the phone and call the references.
Yeah.
Okay, check that number actually belongs to that person if you can. If you get an address for a property and they're saying Mike Smith was the landlord for that property, go and check the ownership records, make sure that Mike Smith is indeed the owner. So do things that can minimize the risk, but they don't completely eliminate it, because there's actual con artists there.
Oh, yeah.
And the next thing that I'll tell you is follow your instinct. I always meet my tenants in person.
Go with your gut. Yep.
I go with my gut. I always meet them in person, and I get a feel. Sometimes I get a perfect application on paper, but when we're talking, I don't get a good vibe about it.
Yep.
They might not be trying to scam me. It's just not a good vibe. I know it's going to cause me problems. And over the last 15 years I've been in business, I've learned to trust my intuition. That's number one. Okay, so no matter how good it looks on paper or the due diligence, if I don't feel good about it, I'm going to let it go. And when I talk to clients that have been in trouble with tenants, there was always that element that they had something telling them in their gut not to move forward with it, but they were shy. They didn't want to offend the person. They didn't want to be, abrasive to them. They just wanted to make sure that everything went smoothly, and they ended up taking the wrong tenant, and it was a headache. But their intuition told them not to do so, but they worked against it. So that's number one. Secondly, is that you do have to keep in mind that it's sensationalism at its best. I've been doing this for 15 years. I own multiple properties. I've helped clients build multiple portfolios.
Right.
And I can count in this hand the amount of times that we've had tenant problems. So yes, it can happen. But if you do your due diligence, you follow your heart, your intuition, most tenants are well-meaning. They want to pay. It's people like you and I, right? We've all been tenants at one point or another in our lives. So most people are not going to cause you trouble.
Right.
You're just trying to really sniff out those that will, and then follow your intuition. There's an abundance, In fact, I would say 99% of the tenants are good. So just go ahead and find them. But yes, be prepared for that one, because that one can make your life miserable. So you have to take that into consideration, but don't be overly afraid, and know that the majority are actually going to be good tenants. So you just got to pick them.
Right. And then after you've gone through that process, they've moved in.
Yep.
What can you do now that your tenant is there? They're living in your property. What can we do to make sure that things are still going well?
Well, first of all, they're your customers, they're your clients.
Yeah.
So how do you treat your clients? You treat them well, you treat them with respect. That's what I find is a lot of people, a lot of landlords, there's an antagonism going on, right? All this, like a tenant will call me and they'll say, hey, the toilet's leaking. I'm not going to get pissed off about it. Hey, thank you, dude.
Thank you for letting me know.
For letting me know. I'm going to maintain it. But a lot of times they get a different tone. And I hear with clients and I hear with people on social media, it's like, oh my God, this tenant's bugging me about this. No, that's how you keep your house from becoming run down.
Exactly.
So first of all, it's a partnership,
Yep.
right? You should, this is not legal advice. I can't give legal advice here, but you should check in your property once in a while. So maybe once a year, do a check, make sure that everything is working.
Sure.
Make sure it doesn't need any major repairs, right? And that's all you can do is be diligent, right? Be diligent, provide good service to the tenant. Make sure if there's an issue, you fix it properly, because at the end of the day, you want to keep them happy, and you want to keep your property in good repair. It's a lot easier than it sounds, but I mean, it might sound overly simple, is what I'm trying to say, but that's a reality of it.
There is work.
Of course.
There is work involved. You are a landlord. You have to be attentive. You have to be engaged. It's the complete opposite from pre-construction. Pre-construction is super passive. You make your deposit, you fill up some checks, you're done. You just wait 3 years, 4 years. There's not as much involved. When you're a landlord, it's your property. You got to look after it. Like you said, you have a client, you have a customer who's in your house. You got to take care of them. Yeah,
and that's the benefit of pre-construction. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's why for a lot of people, and we put a lot of people in condos for pre-construction, so they don't want to do anything, but they don't want to sit outside. They don't want to be in the sidelines. They want to get into the market smartly. They want to get into the market, and they want to build equity. But they don't want to get a mortgage right now. They don't want to be dealing with a tenant.
Right.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So they want to build their money. So that's a perfect place to do it.
And that's where we take it right back to the back to the beginning. What are you looking for in investment?
Correct.
Which one's going to be best for you?
Correct.
So, and that's why just one-on-one meeting with somebody, talking, what are you looking for? Those are the two different options, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I hope you guys have found a lot of value in it.
Yeah.
Because I think that your questions to us are very important. So a lot of these questions, all of these questions have come up from Facebook, from Instagram, from the actual last podcast we did. So please keep them coming. We do focus a lot on investments. That's our majority. A majority of our clients are investors. I would say actually the majority of our clients, a majority of my clients are people who bought their first home and now they want to invest and they become investors. So we don't really deal with a lot of large-scale investors, people already come to us with 20, 30 properties, but we're helping them build to that one property at a time. That's the goal, whatever their goals are, right?
Building the wealth, building your portfolio, getting you into that investment market.
Exactly. So Matthew, thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been great.
Yeah.
To be honest, I walked in, I was a little bit nervous about this, but had a lot of fun. This has been great.
You started shining. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. Looking forward to doing another one.
Yeah, dude. Well, thank you so much for pushing yourself out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are going to love it. So give Matthew a round of applause from your screens there. Thank you again for coming. And I hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to be bringing special guests, guests of interest, lawyers, mortgage brokers, finance experts, because I want you to get the perspective on different professionals and how they work within the real estate field. So look out for the future episodes. Thank you so much for watching. Keep your questions coming. Appreciate your support, your likes, and until next time.
Thanks.